It's time for Lefties Losing It, and you asked for it and you shall receive. Let's jump into a Joy Reid extravaganza. This is just going to be so much fun, so much broken, race-baiting, extreme left nastiness. As I said last night, I'm shattered that she's been sacked by MSNBC. Where else can I find content this utterly unhinged?
One side stands for freedom, while the other meets the textbook definition of fascism, namely a far-right dictatorial regime like Hitler's Germany or Franco's Spain or Mussolini's Italy, but also white-ruled South Africa before Mandela and the black majority took control.
Oh yes, she was obsessed with calling anyone who wasn't an American-hating Marxist a fascist or a racist.
We do have a fascist groundswell in parts of this country, mainly among white men, let's be clear. The racist tomahawk chop, the gesture and chant promoting stereotypes, caricatures, and frankly, hatred of Native American people. Similarities to what happened in Germany and what's happening now in America are just undeniable. History may not repeat verbatim, but it sure does rhyme.
She really is madder than a cut snake. And you'd remember I played a clip last night of Joy Reid mocking white women's tears. Well, look who's crying now.
My show had value, and that, I'm sorry, that what I was doing had value.
No, it had no value, Joy. It was just hysteria, lies, race-baiting hyperbole designed to agitate the ill-informed left who really don't need any further help in being angry and miserable. And if you feel sorry for Joy Reid, if you think I'm being a bit too harsh, just remember her glee when firefighters and police officers were sacked for not getting their COVID shots. Oh yes, we have the receipts.
It's a pattern that we've seen across the country with police unions and officers coming out against mandates. Seattle's police union called the mandate a public safety crisis, as if vaccines aren't for the public's safety. The city's police and firefighters who were fired for non-compliance made a very dramatic exit, marching to City Hall to turn in their boots. And a trooper went as far as to attack Governor Jay Inslee over the radio while claiming that he was being asked to leave because I'm dirty. I mean, no one said not being vaccinated was dirty, but okay then.
Charming. That diatribe went on for some time before she ended on this bit of misinformation and hysteria, accusing police officers of risking the lives of the public by not taking their COVID vaccine. And she also attacked officers for not being masked in a New York subway.
Police officers are supposed to protect and serve, but they're actually putting themselves ahead of the citizens they could infect. We constantly hear that police brutality cases wouldn't even have happened if only everyone just complied and followed all of their commands. But it's clear that some officers don't hold themselves to that same standard. They're literally refusing to comply with the law. Just take what happened at a New York subway stop yesterday, where a rider says he was harassed and then thrown out of the station for asking officers to wear masks, which, by the way, is the law. The NYPD says the event is under internal review. Guess all the cops former Governor Cuomo sent into the subway system are really making an impact. So for putting Americans in danger, officers and unions who are fighting against vaccine mandates, which essentially means fighting to make the public sick, are tonight's absolute worst.
She's just the worst, isn't she? Imagine being too much of a lefty loon even for MSNBC.
Keep Hitler out the White House. Hitler, White House. We keeping him out.
Restoring the name Fort Bragg sure looks like an attempt to resegregate the military. It's a right-wing fantasy land, like Disney World, but in hell. Come to Florida, the meanest place on earth.
This woman is so shameless and comfortable making racist comments that she called the great Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, a racial pejorative on live TV.
If somehow they manage to stumble into the Supreme Court, do any of you guys trust Uncle Clarence and Amy Coney Barrett and those guys to actually follow the letter of the law? No.
Just gross, and shame on the other two MSNBC anchors for not jumping in with a rebuke right there. Remember, this is the woman who a couple of months ago was telling Americans to not have Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner with their Republican family, to shun their own flesh and blood if they vote differently. And this next clip really captures the ugliness of Joy Reid and the far left in general. This rant went on, I don't know, for like 10 minutes. Here's 42 seconds that gives you an idea of the endless bile of the far left.
These are the people who say the undocumented, who they get to call illegal immigrants, like the Pilgrims had permission to come here, have to suffer the consequences of their actions, right? They made the choice to overstay their visas or come into our country illegally, so if they get deported, consequences. But you right-wingers shouldn't have to suffer the consequences of your votes? You don't want to be around me because I voted for fascism. No fair. I'm coughing on you with COVID, but you want me to wear a mask for your safety? No fair. My body, my choice. Well, here's an alternative thought. Make your own dinner, MAGA. Make your own sandwiches. Wipe your own tears. Troll amongst yourselves with Elon and leave us alone.
You really have to marvel at the delusion there, the thought that Republicans are sad about not dining with the likes of her. The audacity is, I've got to say, off the charts. She genuinely thinks Republicans regret their vote. They are the ones who miss out because cousin Sarah with the nose piercings and the green hair boycotts Thanksgiving dinner.
But if you expect the 73 million who voted for the prosecutor, not the felon, and particularly the 92% of black women who voted for Kamala to give you a cookie for your vote, a trophy, a hug, a high five, you might be asking too much. If we want to eat with you, we will. But if we just want some peace over the holidays and we don't want to put up with your trolling while we eat our tofurkey, get over it. Stop acting like we owe you. And for God's sakes, stop whining. It's embarrassing.
Joy Reid telling others to stop whining. I've heard it all now. And already we've got her sad little fan base pushing for a boycott of MSNBC.
Joy Reid won 2 NAACP Image Awards this week. Joy Reid has been an award-winning journalist. She is brilliant. There's nobody who can touch Joy. And just because you find other people to put in a time slot who look just like Joy does not mean that that is Joy's voice. So it's #TV off because we are boycotting MSNBC. We will not be watching. We want to ensure that we are writing letters, sending emails, posting on social, telling people how much Joy Reid means to us.
Boycotting MSNBC, that's activism I can get behind. Keep it up, folks. Now, my next guest did something extraordinary recently. He's a proud Texan, but he turned up at a New York City Council meeting and advocated passionately for the city's veterans who are being abandoned, being neglected, while illegal immigrants receive taxpayer-funded 4-star hotel rooms in the middle of Manhattan. The speech quickly went viral with millions of views, thousands of retweets. Here's a little of what Alex Stein had to say.
Let's talk about the thousands of illegal immigrants that get to live in Manhattan rent-free for months on end. And not only that, when they get the free food, we spend millions of dollars on the food. And you know what they say? We don't like this food. This food is not typical to what we eat in Venezuela. So you know what New York City's going to do? New York City's going to go and we're going to spend millions of dollars to give these illegal immigrants gift cards while veterans are out here literally freezing on the streets right now. So we're talking about a homeless shelter for some veterans when if I say that I'm an asylum seeker, if I'm a terrorist from Venezuela and I was a Tren de Arruga gang member and I said I'm coming here to claim asylum because this is such a great sanctuary city, you're going to give me a free hotel in Manhattan, but a person that goes to Iraq and defends our country against the actual Taliban, they don't get any social services?
Joining me now is comedian and host of Primetime with Alex Stein on Blaze TV. Alex, your advocacy had an impact. You've helped increase pressure on authorities, and New York may be a sanctuary city with a Democrat mayor, but he's read the room. He's announced he's shutting down the main migrant intake centre at the Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, and he also plans to shutter more than 50 migrant shelters by June.
You know, and Rita, listen, I don't want to sit here and pat myself on the back whatsoever. I don't want to do that because a lot of people have exposed what's been going on in the middle of Manhattan when it comes to the Roosevelt Hotel and how illegal immigrants are able to just stay there on months on end. You know, people are staying there basically, I think there's people that have been there over a year, free room and board. But one thing that I do know is that the person that was running that meeting is a guy by the name of Bob Holden. And Bob Holden was running this Veterans Commission because he wants to help out veterans in New York City. And my speech, I have word from Bob Holden's staff that it was instrumental in Eric Adams making the decision to, say this on Monday that they're done with the Roosevelt Hotel. So I'm not saying this to brag, but I never get any wins. I go and I speak at all these meetings, and everybody thinks it's so dumb, Rita. And finally, I have a meeting, and it goes so viral, and I actually hear from the city council that it had a big effect. And like I said, other people exposed the Roosevelt Hotel. It's not just me, but just the fact that I got things in motion, it makes me actually feel really good.
But you've been exposing it from the start. You've gone to the hotel, you've shown what's been happening, the fact that they won't let homeless veterans in there. But if you're a migrant who's arrived in America illegally, you're welcome. Now, a big part of why these migrant centres are also closing down, as well as your advocacy, is the fact that Donald Trump has largely solved the border crisis, the thing that they said couldn't be solved, and he's done it in a matter of weeks. Is quite remarkable. But I've got some bad news for you, Alex, some disturbing news to impart. Your biological stepfather, Tucker Carlson's life may be in peril. Former Navy SEAL and current Congressman Dan Crenshaw, he was caught on a hot mic saying he'll kill Tucker if he ever sees him. This is after an interview with GB News' Stephen Edgington. Let's first have a listen to what was said during that interview.
Just coming back to this $100 billion to Ukraine, I know that people like Tucker Carlson would make the argument that there's a real opportunity cost there. We could have spent that money on the border or fixing, issues in America. Yeah. What do you make of that argument that all this money could have been spent to help Americans and not Ukrainians?
Well, you can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. We spend 75-80% of our budget on a welfare state in America, on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I would love to ask Tucker what he thinks that $100 billion should be spent on, and if he would vote for it as a conservative. Tucker doesn't know what he's talking about.
And Alex, this is what he had to say after the interview.
Have you ever met Tucker?
We've talked a lot. If I ever meet him, he's the worst person.
So he says, if I meet him, I'll effing kill him. He followed that up with, I'm not joking. He's your state's congressman, Alex, from the great state of Texas. Do you approve of these threats against Tucker Carlson's life? Seriously though, Alex, this is crazy antics from a supposed Republican.
Well, forget about whatever political party he's a part of. This shows you how insensitive Dan Crenshaw truly is. And he's a guy, and I appreciate his service, lost his eye fighting and defending this country. And yet his biggest mission in life is sending more young people to go and lose their own eye in these unnecessary wars. And Tucker Carlson has been calling out Dan Crenshaw for a long time. So even though Dan Crenshaw considers himself conservative, if he was truly conservative, he would be more about individual liberty and limited government. And that's not what Dan Crenshaw is interested in. So, him saying this, it just shows you that he's a very callous individual that does not value human life.
Now, you've been travelling the country, visiting hotbeds of leftist activism and having debates with some of your ideological foes. It hasn't always gone smoothly, Alex. Let's have a look.
No, but what are you mad about? I know, but what are you mad about? You're mad about what? Yes, you are.
She did seem mad, Alex. Tell me why you're doing this and what you hope to achieve.
Well, Rita, I'm so lucky. I'm working with Charlie Kirk's great organization, Turning Point USA, and I'm going on a college tour. And I have been speaking at the colleges for Turning Point for over 2 years. But now, because of the success of our recent videos, they're actually encouraging me to go to more universities and do more of these public debates, because Charlie can only debate at so many schools, and Turning Point is a huge organization. So I'm very lucky that I get to go there and debate these college kids. And listen, I know sometimes in these clips I can own them, but these kids are just getting out of class. Like, they know dates and facts. It's not easy to go and have an open debate with kids that are literally studying Lord knows what subject that I'm willing to debate them on. So come out to any event, follow me on social media, and we're doing one at SMU this week, and then University of Texas at Dallas and Loyola Marymount. We're going to UConn. We're going to about 10 schools. So it's going to be really great. If you're in one of those schools, come debate me live on campus.
Let's turn our attention to Ohio now, where earlier today, former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy announced he's running to be governor.
President Trump is reviving our conviction in America. We require a leader here at home who will revive our conviction in Ohio. And that is why today I am honored to announce that I am running to be the next governor of a great state at the heart of the greatest nation known to mankind, the state where I was born and raised, the state where Apurva and I raise our 2 sons today, a state whose best days are still ahead. I am honored to announce my candidacy to serve as the next governor of the state of Ohio.
He gives a good speech. How do you see his chances, Alex?
I think it all relies on J.D. Vance. He needs his Ohio buddy to give him that assist. And if J.D. Vance comes in, strong in support of Vivek, then I think that'll help him. He did get in a little hot water for his H1N1 visa comments, and that lost him a little support within the conservative movement. But I don't think he lost enough support that he couldn't win an election like this if he had the Trump campaign, especially J.D. Vance, who is his friend, with all the success that they're currently having in the White House. If they give him the Trump bump, I do think Vivek could be the governor of Ohio.
Now, I'm going to need just a quick answer to this question. This is crazy stuff from California. Where else? A California school district will be providing menstrual products in boys' bathrooms down to grade 3. Grade 3 boys, this is the Long Beach Unified School District, and this is apparently due to state laws, Alex. So tampons for boys in grade 3. Make it make sense, Alex?
Well, it makes sense if you look at the superintendent of the school board is heavily invested in tampon companies. I guess that's the only way that it would make sense, because none of these 3-year-olds need any of these products.
I don't think that's actually the case, but it's just ideological madness, and that's what we expect from California. Alex Stein, thank you so much for your time tonight. Joining me now is Sky News contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, let's start with Donald Trump's meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, where they discussed everything from European involvement in the Russian-Ukraine war to Trump's fresh tariffs. Now, Trump and Macron have this bizarre handshake ritual. They've long had this where they try to outdo each other. It's kind of endearing, I guess, and it happened again today.
President Trump, do you have a message for Pope Francis, sir, who's still in the hospital? Do you have a message for Pope Francis?
And they are both rather grabby with each other.
That is the most beautiful language. I have no idea what he's saying, but that is the most...
Now, there were a number of light-hearted moments throughout their meeting, including this one, where Donald Trump called out Emmanuel Macron for doing something a little underhanded, but he did it in such a jovial, friendly manner. This is great. Watch this.
I just want to tell you a little story. So we were at the Eiffel Tower having dinner with your wonderful wife and with my wonderful wife, and we came out and he started speaking the French deal. And we didn't have an interpreter, and he was going on and on and on, and I was just nodding, yes, yes, yes. And he really sold me out, because I got back the next day and I read the papers. I said, that's not what we said. He's a smart customer, I will tell you that. That wasn't exactly what we agreed to.
Oh, it's an interesting relationship, Kosha, but I think that story, that's just classic Donald Trump, because he called him out. He said that he sold him out. He went and repeated stuff that wasn't strictly true, but done in such a friendly manner.
Such a friendly manner, gives him credit, calling him a tough customer. And, we've talked about this before, the Trump sense of humor has long been underrated. His charm also, a lot of people, he grates them the wrong way, but a lot of people actually find him charming. And you can see that President Macron clearly does. I kind of got the sense, yes, a lot of it was about power playing, this very famous handshake routine that they've had going on now for 12 years, and who's the alpha dog and all of that. But you could also kind of see through it that they actually seem to genuinely like each other. There is sort of a friendly jousting aspect to their relationship, and that speaks to that charm and humor.
Because they could not be more different in so many ways politically. And this is a very charged time when you look at Americans' relationship with Europe. J.D. Vance gave that incredible speech where he made it clear, and that speech was for the Trump administration, that we do not back your values, these open borders, hard green left policies. This is not suppression of free speech. That was a big theme of his speech as well. So where is that relationship, and where is the whole Ukraine-Russia conflict in that? Because America, again, has made it clear that they want an end to this conflict and they're not going to keep funding it long term.
I think we're going to see some changes rapidly, just given the pace of the Trump administration 2.0 over here. But the whole Ukraine thing is one piece in the broader chessboard that Trump is trying to reset. So some of it, yes, in its own right, he does want the war to end. He is very much in favor of peace and not having so many casualties and that carnage continuing. But also, it is sort of a linchpin right now in recalibrating the relationship with Europe, where they've got to step up and pay closer to 5% of their GDP on defense. I wouldn't be surprised if we see further moves where Trump starts to shut down military bases in Germany, for example. It's now 80 years post-World War II. Let's recalibrate. And simultaneously, he's also trying to open up relationships and normalize relationship with Russia. Maybe an uneasy ally, but they are a significant player in many ways. And that Macron sort of was trying to push back on that or give the counter argument, but we see that the Trump team is moving ahead with normalizing that.
Well, so much of what he's been pushing for is starting to eventuate. As soon as he had those attacks against Zelensky, we saw the European nations pledging to back Ukraine, to spend more, to do all the things that the Trump administration has been pushing them to do. So sometimes the way he gets there is a little bit unconventional, but he does eventually get there. Now, it's looking like Donald Trump will have his entire cabinet confirmed in record time, beating out previous presidents. So far, Trump has had 18 of his 22 cabinet nominees confirmed. You compare that with President Biden, who had 18 cabinet nominees confirmed 57 days into his term. So we are seeing a really quick pace here. It's not just the number that is getting confirmed so quickly, it's the quality of these candidates. They are loyal to the Trump team. It's very different from the first administration.
Absolutely. He's much more organized. We can see that transition team was funded and in place 6 months before the election in the eventuality that the state would come. They are much more vetted and aligned with his populist vision, which is breaking away from the traditional Republican Party and the candidates that he was putting in place last time. The speed is very interesting because a lot of people from his base were nervous that John Thune, who's a little bit more establishment type, would he slow walk it? That hasn't happened, so it's very clear that Trump is more powerful now, and even the establishment wing, which has dwindled in the Republican Party, but it is still there, seems to be following his lead much more so now than last time. And the last thing I would point is that all of them are very young, which is quite refreshing.
And one of the young ones is the new director of the FBI, Kash Patel. He is one that the Trump base is ecstatic about, has an enormous job to reform that organisation that has become politicised, been weaponised to attack conservatives. He is really quite important to what Trump is trying to achieve in his second term.
Absolutely. Him and then the deputy, Dan Bongino, who just came out as well. Definitely they seem to be singing from that same song sheet of what Trump and Pam Bondi, who they both report into the AG, want to do in terms of ultimately rebuilding trust in this once venerable, vaunted institution that has completely lost all trust, and it ranks very low out of all institutions in there. Also some kind of justice and reform possibly for people who came after political enemies, not just Trump, but others, will be something that will be very different, but they do seem to be moving in that direction. We'll see. And then the last thing, too, is all of these people are sort of made for TV in their own way. And Kash and Dan Bongino, a little rough around the edges. They're certainly not everybody's cup of tea, but they know how to do battle with adversarial media. And so you're going to see a lot of that, I think, in the next 4 years.
And something that's never talked about, and I don't really talk about it, but it's hard to not notice it, is the diversity of this cabinet. It's not something that Trump boasts about, or he doesn't try to say, I'm picking someone because I need a black woman, but there is a great deal of racial diversity, many women in senior positions in the administration.
Yeah, that sort of just happens to be the byproduct. As you say, he doesn't go for that, the way Biden famously said for Supreme Court Justice and as vice president, and that kind of came back to bite the party, one could say. But actually what it does is the diversity of his cabinet reflects, I think, the diversity of the MAGA populist movement and how that whole realignment in the country and in the electorate has led to actually a pretty cross-sectional coalition, if you will, of people, and that is reflected in these cabinet appointees.
Absolutely. Now, let's cross to New York, hear from the New York City Mayor, Eric Adams. He's announced that the Roosevelt Hotel's Asylum Arrival Centre and Humanitarian Emergency Response and Relief Centre is closing them down.
Today, we are announcing the Roosevelt Hotel, which served as both our Asylum Arrival Center and the Humanitarian Emergency Response and Relief Center for nearly 2 years, will be closing in the coming months.
That's interesting. It's something that has been a big topic of discussion in New York. It is a sanctuary city, but they actually got touched by this crisis. It wasn't just the border towns in Texas that were dealing with the flood of illegal immigrants who came in under the Biden administration.
So high time, many people would say. It's too little too late, but better late than never. And this story has so many layers of salt upon salt that they poured over this wound of illegal immigration that's afflicted the country and the city. So first of all, the fact that they're a sanctuary city, which is outrageous, but that's what it is. Second of all, you've got prime real estate, a hotel in Midtown Manhattan being used to house illegals. That is like a stick in the eye. Third, it turns out that it's actually owned by Pakistan. I just only recently learned this.
Really?
That the airline, the national airline of Pakistan, bought it and has been leasing it to New York City as of 2023. So our taxpayer dollars are going to fund a Pakistani-owned hotel that's housing migrants. Like, you just can't make this stuff up. And then the last thing that had happened last week is where FEMA gave $59 million to them against the executive order of Trump, and then Kristi Noem had to claw it back, so that was a small win. All those things are just such a slap in the face, and high time that this is finally coming to an end. I
tell you, Eric Adams, every time I hear from him recently, he sounds like he's a Republican man, not a Democrat. He's kind of I don't know, he's been red-pilled. Maybe it's because of the Biden administration, the Justice Department came for him. Now let's have a look at some fascinating polling from Germany. A survey of more than 60,000 gay German men by Europe's largest gay dating platform found that the majority of them voted for the right-wing AfD party, which is led by an openly gay politician. But, Kosha, this is so fascinating to me because the lesbian gay vote has traditionally been hard left. That community has supported left-wing parties, but a lot of the policies that those parties support, including open borders, are not good for that community. And I think belatedly, the gay men of Germany have found out having an influx of people into their country who have zero respect for their lifestyle and their sexual orientation is possibly not a good thing.
It's this coalition of the fringes that the left side of politics in most liberal democracies has stitched together in the last 40 years was always going to fray, because you have these different groups who actually are on a collision course to each other in terms of core values, but they were all, the common ground was that they hate the other side, and that stitched them together and put them in power for so long. Now you have the situation where the level of immigration that's in there and the asylum pipeline and people coming from these cultures where gays and lesbians are not welcome at a very deep, deep level, that is, of course, going to see that kind of a result. So it is interesting. The flip side is the more sort of center-right boomers didn't really vote for the party, so there is a cost to having it appeal too much to this demographic. You might be turning off the other demographic, and that's the needle they're going to have to thread.
Well, it's incredible because the Conservatives got the biggest percentage. I think it was around 28%. AfD had 21%. The second biggest vote, and yet they're not going to be in a coalition together. It just seems like it's a system designed to defy the will of the majority. It's very frustrating looking on just from Australia. Before you go, I want to ask you about rogue Australian Senator Fatima Payman, who's described Iran, yes, Iran, as an incredible place for women claiming that Iran allows women to participate in the workforce, whoopee, to ensure that they have a voice, that their voices are heard, and that their voices are involved in a democratic process. Reality is that we're not privy to living here and listening to the propaganda that we receive from very single-sided organisations with a specific agenda. Kosha, as someone whose parents escaped from Iran, as someone who can never go back to that country, I could never go and visit family because I would literally be thrown in jail and never see never see daylight again. I cannot believe the ill-informed nonsense coming from someone who should know better, whose own background should see her not running this campaign for the Iranian regime. This is a country that treats women like second-class citizens, that forces women to wear the hijab. Women have died fighting against that. And yet we've got an Australian senator who chooses to wear the hijab, advocating for the Iranian regime.
And you know this better than anybody, that was so disingenuous. I can only surmise that she does know exactly what the situation over there is, and she's doing it to stir the pot either in the left-wing base of the country or in her former party. There's something else political behind her approach.
Possibly, maybe there is some goal she's trying to achieve, but it's such a cynical thing for a woman with incredible influence to be doing that instead of taking a stand for the women of Iran. Kosha Gator, thank you so much for your time tonight.